Hello, everyone. My name is Cheryl. I'm 29 years old, and I recently went through a divorce. This event wasn't just a turning point in my life. It also included a fair share of dramatic fallout with my ex-husband, Richard, and his difficult mother, Doris. I first crossed paths with Richard during an internship in the final year of my college studies. We dated for 4 years before he proposed, leading us to the altar. Our married life, however, was filled with continuous ups and downs. Richard was exceptionally attached to his mother, to the extent that if he didn't speak to her daily, his mood would sour. Doris had pampered him to the point where he was helpless with even the simplest household tasks. Doris's disdain for me was evident right from our first meeting. She would often demean my accomplishments and insult me, making it clear she thought I was not a suitable match for her son. Whenever I confronted her about her behavior, her justification was blunt and hurtful. She believed I wasn't good enough for Richard. What made matters worse was Richard's inability to stand up for me. Our arguments about this were frequent, but he maintained he could never oppose his mother. Over time, I learned to disregard her barbs, and eventually Doris stopped communicating with me altogether. About a year into our marriage, Richard and I decided to try for a baby. Wanting to devote myself fully to prospective motherhood, I left my job to minimize stress. Unfortunately, despite our efforts, I did not become pregnant for a long time, which visibly strained our relationship. Struggling with feelings of inadequacy, I decided to return to work to divert my attention from our fertility issues. A few months after resuming work, I started feeling unusually ill. Initially, I dismissed it as a minor issue, but as my condition worsened, I sought medical advice. After undergoing several tests, the doctor confirmed I was pregnant. This news filled me with immense joy, and I looked forward to sharing it with Richard, hopeful for what this new chapter would bring. I was thrilled, bursting with excitement to share some wonderful news with Richard. That evening, I decided to prepare his favorite meal as a special way to celebrate the moment. When he arrived home, I could hardly contain my joy. "Hey, babe, I have something important to share with you," I began as we sat down for dinner. Richard, looking weary, replied, "What is it? I'm really tired tonight. Can you keep it brief?" "Of course," I said, trying to manage my excitement. "You know how I've been feeling off and nauseous lately? I thought it was just some bad food, so I went to the doctor." His brow furrowed with concern. "Is everything okay?" "Yes, better than okay, actually," I smiled, barely able to keep the news in any longer. "The blood test came back, and it turns out I'm pregnant." Richard's fatigue seemed to melt away instantly. "What? Oh my God, that's amazing news. I know, after all our efforts, it finally happened. I haven't mentioned this, but I was starting to lose hope." "Me too," he admitted. "I felt really down, thinking maybe it wouldn't happen for us. I know it's not right to tie our worth to this, but it was hard not feeling like I could do the one thing I so dearly wanted. But now, here we are. Everything's turned out well. However, the doctor did mention that it's a high-risk pregnancy, so we need to be very careful." "Don't worry about a thing," Richard assured me, his voice full of determination. "I'll take good care of you. We should start planning. There's a baby shower and maybe even a gender reveal to think about." I laughed gently, calming his rush of plans. "Let's just take a moment to enjoy this news between us first. We can share it with everyone else a bit later, once we're past the first trimester and more settled." "Right, of course," he agreed, his excitement still evident. "So, dinner's ready?" "Absolutely," I replied. The following months were challenging. I battled constant nausea and vomiting, a tough price to pay for the precious life growing inside me. Thankfully, Richard was incredibly supportive. Without his help, getting through those first 6 months would have been much harder. As my symptoms began to ease, Richard and I started to feel more hopeful and excited about the journey ahead. Following the joyful news of my pregnancy, Richard and I decided to host a baby shower to celebrate. We invited all our closest friends and family, and inevitably, Doris was among the attendees. Throughout the party, I did my best to keep my distance from her, but eventually she managed to corner both Richard and me, forcing a conversation. "Congratulations on the pregnancy, Cheryl," Doris said, her tone polite but distant. "Thank you, Doris," I replied, maintaining my composure. "It's been a tough ride, honestly. I've been quite sick most mornings, and it's been hard to even get out of bed." "That sounds rough, but I suppose it's all worth it, especially since it's been a long journey to get here," she noted, not without a hint of skepticism. "It truly is rewarding," I responded, trying to keep the atmosphere light. "It feels incredible to finally be pregnant." Doris then dropped a bombshell. "Really? You better hope that the baby is yours." Confused, I asked, "Excuse me? What do you mean?" "Well, doesn't it seem suspicious? You two were trying for over a year, and then suddenly after Cheryl returns to work, she gets pregnant. Are you suggesting something happened with a coworker?" Doris's insinuations were clear. Shocked, I responded, "Are you accusing me of cheating on Richard?" "I didn't say that. You did." "But why else would it happen right after you went back to work?" "Perhaps the stress of not being able to conceive led you to." "Seek relief elsewhere," Doris continued, her voice dripping with accusation. Richard chimed in, his mother's words affecting him. "Cheryl, is there any truth to this?" "Richard, are you serious? Do you really believe what your mother is suggesting over your wife?" I was dismayed by his doubt. "It's a simple question, Cheryl. Just give me a yes or no," he insisted. "Fine, Richard, if you need to hear it, no, I did not cheat on you." "I can't believe you'd even think that," I answered, hurt by his lack of trust. "Kind of," he muttered, still unsure. Unable to handle the emotional turmoil, I excused myself. "I need some space. Doris, your accusation is out of line. I've shown nothing but dedication and love to Richard, and it's heartbreaking that you'd insinuate otherwise." I retreated to our bedroom, locking the door behind me. That night, I cried myself to sleep, overwhelmed by the betrayal. It was hard to fathom how quickly Richard's trust could waver based on his mother's words. For the next few days, he didn't try to speak to me, and I was too hurt to initiate conversation. The pain of his doubt lingered, casting a shadow over what should have been a joyful time. Every time I saw Richard, a fresh wave of anger washed over me. Despite my hurt, I longed to bridge the gap between us, to understand why he doubted me. Eventually, Richard took the first step. "Hey, can we talk?" he asked. "I don't know, are you going to accuse me of cheating again?" My response was tinged with frustration. "There's no need to be sarcastic," he said, attempting to keep the conversation light. "I'm trying to communicate. If you're not ready, I can give you more time." "Fine, I'm sorry for being sharp. I'd like to talk," I conceded, my voice softening. "First of all, how are you feeling physically?" he began tentatively. "Physically, I feel great. Emotionally, though, it feels like I've been stabbed in the back," I replied, my voice heavy with emotion. "Why do you feel that way?" he asked, though it seemed obvious. "You can't be serious, I just want to understand you better," he continued, sensing my irritation. "Okay, here it is," I started, my frustration evident. "It hurt that you even entertained your mother's accusations of me cheating. I've been completely faithful, and you know very well how much your mother dislikes me. She'd do anything to see us apart, and yet you seem to consider her conspiracy." "I didn't believe her," Richard defended himself. "But you doubted me, even if just for a moment," I countered. "That doubt led you to question my fidelity. If you truly trusted me, you wouldn't have needed to ask about it at all." "You have to admit, my mom did raise a point worth considering," he tried to explain. "Do you realize that her accusation also indirectly insulted you, suggesting you couldn't have fathered a child?" I pointed out. "She implied you were impotent." "No, she did not," he replied, still in denial. "I don't care if you remain in denial, but don't ever question my loyalty again," I said firmly. "Here, you can even call my male co-workers to check if there was anything inappropriate." "That's not necessary," Richard hastily replied. "No, it seems necessary, especially since you think I could cheat on you and trick you into raising another man's child," I persisted. "I'm not calling your coworkers. That would be embarrassing for both of us," he admitted. "What I do want, though, is for us to take a DNA test after the baby is born, just to be sure." "Excuse me? I will not do that," I responded sharply, shocked and hurt by his continued mistrust. This conversation was spiraling into a deeper rift than I had hoped to mend. "I understand that emotions are running high right now, but let's put this conversation on hold until after the baby is born. For now, I want you to focus on having a stress-free pregnancy. Let's not bring this up again." Richard's words were meant to be reassuring, but they felt like a dismissal. I was too drained to argue. The pregnancy was already taking a toll on me, and I didn't need additional stress. During the remaining months of my pregnancy, Richard and I slept in separate rooms. He still took care of my basic needs, but the emotional distance was palpable. To make matters more complicated, Doris started visiting almost every day, spending hours with Richard in his office. Their hushed whispers only deepened the sense of betrayal I felt. When the time came, I endured a difficult labor, but was rewarded with the birth of a healthy baby girl. I briefly lost consciousness after delivery, but upon waking and seeing my daughter for the first time, I was struck by how much she resembled Richard. The thought crossed my mind that if Richard insisted on a DNA test now, it might be the last straw for our relationship. After being discharged from the hospital, I decided I needed a month without visitors to recover and bond with my daughter in peace. Richard respected this and kept mostly to himself, avoiding any discussions about the unresolved issues between us. When we finally opened our doors to family, Doris was eager to meet her granddaughter. "Congratulations on the birth," she said somewhat formally. "Thank you, Doris. How was it?" "Well, you've given birth before. You know what it's like," I replied, my patience wearing thin. "Cheryl, you can't speak to my mother like that," Richard interjected. As if on cue, Doris turned to Richard, ignoring my presence. "Richard, sweetie, did she do it?" "Do what?" he responded, playing along with her indirect questioning. "Hello, I'm still here," I snapped, frustrated. "Stop talking about me as if I'm not in the room and just tell me what you want to know." Richard sighed. "Mom was asking if you've done the DNA test yet." "I have not, and I won't be doing it either," I stated firmly. "So you're admitting to cheating on my son then?" Doris accused sharply. "That's not true at all. I think taking a DNA test would only damage whatever little trust is left between us," I explained, trying to hold back my frustration. The situation was fragile, and every accusation from Doris only served to deepen the wounds. The early days with my daughter should have been filled with joy, not tainted by mistrust and conflict. Refusing to take the DNA test was about more than just proving a point. It was about maintaining my dignity. "Taking that test would only confirm your belief that I could be unfaithful, and that's not the kind of relationship I want," I told Richard firmly. "By not taking it, you're making it seem like you're hiding something," Richard retorted, his voice strained with suspicion. "The only thing I'm hiding is how deeply hurt and angry I am," I countered, my frustration growing. "Throughout this pregnancy, you've hung on every word your mother has said, ignoring everything I've tried to communicate. You accused me of infidelity, added stress that complicated my pregnancy and labor, and you never once considered how your actions affected me. It seems you only care about what your manipulative mother thinks." Richard's defense was instant. "Of course you're defensive. Given your mother's questionable past, it's not surprising." "Listen carefully," I replied sharply. "You can insult me all you want, but don't bring my mother into this. And speaking of parenting, it's quite clear your mother raised you to be dependent on her. Without my support, you wouldn't even manage basic tasks like cooking. I've been the one enabling you to live independently." Richard's face hardened. "My mom did what was necessary to raise me, and don't you dare speak about her like that. It seems I'll have to raise our child with the strength I've learned from my own experiences, not from the dysfunction you and your mother bring," I declared, my voice cold with resolve. "It will be a long time before I allow you or her anywhere near my child, if this is how you choose to treat me." Before I could process the escalation, Richard's hand struck my face. Shocked, I stared back at him, unable to believe the man I thought I knew could express such anger physically. I had always seen Richard as passive and gentle, but this act shattered that image. As I tried to regain my senses, I felt my hair being yanked back. Doris's face loomed close to mine, her voice hissing, "Never speak to me with disrespect again," before she too slapped me. The yelling continued from both of them, but it was drowned out by the ringing in my ears from the blows. After they finally left me alone, the reality of the situation sank in. I had never been hit before. Not even my mother had ever raised a hand to me, not even playfully. This level of violence was horrifying. Hearing my baby cry, I hurried to ensure she was safe, alone in the house, reeling from the assault and the absolute betrayal I had just experienced. I scooped up my child and rushed to my car, aiming for the safety of my mom's house. I called her en route to ensure she was home and informed her I would be arriving soon. When I reached her doorstep, her warm greeting quickly turned to horror at the sight of my condition. "Hi, sweetie, what happened? Why is your face red and swollen?" she gasped, ushering me inside. "It was Richard," I managed to say, the words heavy with disbelief. "What? Why would he hit you?" she asked, alarmed. "He believes I cheated on him. Doris convinced him that's why I got pregnant," I explained, feeling the weight of the accusation anew. "Okay, this is urgent, but first I need to take pictures of your bruises. Is Ryan okay?" she asked with urgency. "Yes, he's fine. He cried a lot on the way here, but fell asleep shortly after," I replied, grateful for his calm now. As my mom prepared to document my injuries, she urged me to explain everything that happened. "Tell me exactly what went down," she insisted. I recounted the events as calmly as I could. When they demanded I take a DNA test to prove Ryan was Richard's, I tried to stay composed. "But then Doris insulted your parenting, implying you raised me to be promiscuous, and I lost my cool." "Did you hit her?" Mom asked, concerned about how this could be perceived legally. "No, I would never resort to violence," I assured her. "Good. We must keep that clear. What happened next?" I swallowed hard. The memory was vivid and painful. I retaliated with words, criticizing her parenting. Richard didn't take that well. He slapped me, and then Doris. She grabbed my hair and slapped me too, warning me never to disrespect her again. "Oh, sweetie, I'm so sorry you had to go through that," my mom said, her voice thick with emotion. "But we're taking this to court. I won't let you suffer what I did. Don't worry about anything. I'll handle all the paperwork. They'll pay for what they did to you." As my mom ensured I wasn't concussed, she instructed me to rest while she took care of my baby. Over the next few days, she shielded me from any stress, handling everything quietly. Doris's insults about my mom's past, her struggles as a single mother, were part of her cruelty. But my mom was determined to protect me and ensure justice for the violence I endured. When my mom was just out of high school, she found herself pregnant with me, without a degree and disowned by her parents. Left with few options, she ventured into a role that many might misunderstand. My mom became an escort, but not in the conventional sense many might think. She was stunningly beautiful and possessed a charismatic personality that could captivate anyone. Her job mostly involved accompanying high-profile clients to business dinners, leveraging her charm and eloquence. Through this, she built a network of influential connections across the city. These connections remained strong over the years, providing her with stability long after she retired from that world following my high school graduation. So, when she assured me she would handle the situation with Richard and Doris, I didn't question her capabilities. About a week after the dreadful confrontation, my mom informed me we were meeting Richard and Doris at a high-end restaurant. Though I trusted my mom's judgment, anxiety gnawed at me about the purpose of this meeting. As we arrived, Richard and Doris were already there, dressed elegantly. Despite their appearance, I remained wary. "Hi, Cheryl. Hi, Lynette. Please take a seat. Why don't you order something? The tab's on us," Richard offered, his tone overly cordial. "Why are you being so nice?" I asked, still shaken by our last encounter. "Oh, we've always been nice, you just didn't see it," Doris chimed in, trying to smooth over the past. "You weren't nice to my face or my scalp last time I saw you," I retorted, referring to the physical abuse. "About that, we're sorry for how we treated you." "We let our emotions take over, which was wrong," Richard admitted. "You call that a prophetic excuse?" I countered, skeptical of their sudden remorse. "Well, your mother lashed out at us after we insulted you, which was fair because honestly, you are an inspiring woman, and so is she," Doris explained, shifting her tone to one of admiration. "Why are you suddenly praising my mother?" "You had no problem insulting her and me before," I questioned, suspicious of their intentions. "If it sounded like an insult, I am sorry, we didn't mean it," Doris insisted. "I'm not here to be flattered by you. Nothing you say is going to change what's about to happen," my mom interjected firmly. "Mom, what's going on?" I asked, confused by the turn of events. "What I mean is, these two have received court summons and are under investigation for abusing you and endangering Ryan," my mom revealed, her voice calm but authoritative. "I know you've looked down on my past, but it's that very past that connected me with some of the most influential people in this state." Richard and Doris looked genuinely shocked. "We had no idea how resourceful you are, Lynette. We are sorry for our actions." Richard apologized, his voice filled with regret. This confrontation at the restaurant was a turning point, laying bare the consequences of their actions and the unexpected strength and reach of my mother's past and present. Following the shocking revelation of Richard and Doris's actions, my mother coolly rejected their desperate plea for mercy. "Why should I spare you? You assaulted my daughter when you felt disrespected. Why wouldn't I pursue justice when she has bruises all over her face? Your feeble attempt to make amends won't work. I suggest you find a good lawyer and prepare for jail time and significant fines. Let's go now." I hadn't been aware of the specifics of my mother's actions until that moment, but watching Doris and Richard realize the gravity of their situation felt like a profound form of retribution. However, my mother wasn't done yet. Her determination and connections were about to be fully leveraged. She enlisted the best lawyer in the city to represent me, initiating charges of domestic violence and child endangerment against both Richard and Doris. The trial was not just a legal battle. It dragged their names through the mud, severely damaging their reputations. My mother, knowing several influential journalists, ensured the case was well publicized, exposing Richard and Doris's true characters to the entire community. The consequences for them were severe. Both were sentenced to 4 years in prison and faced heavy fines. Additionally, Richard lost his parental rights, and Doris was stripped of her parental rights. A restraining order was put in place, forbidding them from coming within 105 feet of me or my child. By the end of the trial, their lives outside prison seemed almost more daunting than their incarceration. Their professional and personal reputations had been irreparably tarnished. After the tumult had settled, I took my mother out to dinner at her favorite restaurant to express my gratitude. She explained that seeing me hurt had triggered her protective instincts, compelling her to act decisively. It was a poignant moment, making me look forward to nurturing and protecting my child, albeit hopefully under far less dramatic circumstances. Life as a single mother was challenging, especially with an infant to care for, but the peace of mind that came from knowing my child was safe from harm allowed me to focus on our future. I was thankful for my mother's unwavering support through such a harrowing time, and I was slowly rebuilding my life, secure in the knowledge that those who had hurt us were unable to do so any longer. Thank you for hearing my story.